Maurice Kimuli, and believe it or not, the middle name is Mutua. It's a well-known company. I come from Kitui. I had expected to find Honorable Chambia here because he's my neighbor in Kitui, and the neighbor principle in Ukambani means that your homes are within 100 kilometers. We have a way of saying no. So, Honorable Champions' home is 70 kilometers from my home. And you can imagine that we are really true neighbors. It's just a walking distance. And I am delighted to be here once again to talk about alternative justice. When I got this invitation, I had expected that in the normal manner of doing things in Embu, the meeting would start just before lunch, so that the first item on the order of things would be lunch. Because the last time we were here, we were actually overfed. And we ate too much. So when I saw that this time around you had now decided to start the meeting at 2:30, I read a few things through my mind. And one of the questions I've not been able to answer is whether Embu has now divested from its legendary generosity and largesse.
No, this time is going to be dinner.
Next time it's going to be dinner.
No, that's today.
Today?
That's why it is afternoon.
Good. Now my heart is pacified with that confirmation. You know, you've got to, in this life, you've got to know which side of your bread is buttered. And you've got to learn to speak for yourself before you speak for others. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. And so, because time has gone, I will take a few minutes, friends, to lead us in engaging in this conversation about alternative justice. And I will leave some time for questions. And I want us to agree how much time I should use. Let me ask Afande. You're the only one here who by visual manifestation, yeah, there are two, who by visual manifestations can handle an arm, and therefore you would better guide us. How much time do you think I should use?
Just on consideration of other activities to be handled, and the weather, for those who have to go home, an hour is enough.
An hour. So we can finish everything within an hour, including the questions and concerns that you're going to raise. Do we agree? Yes. It's now effectively 6. And more significantly, let us not leave before PJ allows us to leave. When I was driving here, I heard that people speaking a lot of Kikamba out here. And I wondered whether they had now extended the geographical limits of Machakos County. So, judge in her usual element informs me that there is also tea to be taken, and we will agree that we shall take tea. Tea in Embu, incidentally, is taken while you are on your feet, like a cocktail. And when I arrived, I took some time to walk around, and I saw the cocktail room is well set up. You know, those tables that reach you up just above your stomach. So do we agree that all eating will be attended to after we are done with what? We agree? Yes. And the officer tells us that the weather has not been very good. We should thank God always. The Bible says, The Bible says that, thank God in all situations, even when bad things happen to us. And you know that a lot of things have happened, which are not necessarily good, and I don't think this is a time that we should blame one another. This is a time that we should stand together. In things fall apart, the story is told of a time when the rain disappeared. Now this is what happened. Now I tell a lot of stories, and so you have to be very keen to pick the lessons that I will draw out of my presentation. Because if you don't, you will leave this place saying, what kind of a man did you invite here? So the rain falls in Chinua Achebe's or Congo's Nigeria. And those who are very hardworking plant. As normal, when the rain comes, when some people see the signs of rainfall, they plant. Others do not plant until they hear that 3 or 4 people have been swept away by a river. Now they know that it's rainfall. And so those who are quick to plant, planted, and then the rain disappeared for a month or 2, and the yams died. And those who had not planted, as those who had planted were mourning, those who had not planted, then said, it was our wise foresight. We knew this rain would not remain. And so after that, Chinua Achebe says, then the rain returned and it fell as it had never fallen before. And so what they did was to go to the rainmaker. Like now you see the way it has been raining. So they went to the rainmaker and they told the rainmaker to stop the rain. Now, a rainmaker's artistry is about bringing rain, not stopping. And so the rainmaker told them that the rain was too much. And there was something supernatural about the amount of rain. And the personal dynamism required to counteract such forces of nature was well beyond the human frame. And this is what I'm saying. When things happen the way they're happening in Kenya, those of us who believe in God just need to pray and to tell Him, take this cup away from us. Now that is where I begin as a preacher, and that is the last sermon I'm going to give for this evening. Alternative justice is my principal sermon today. And it comes at the right time. Judge, I have watched the interviews of the Judicial Service Commission. For the people who want to become judges, almost each of them is asked about alternative justice. And because it is not only a constitutional imperative, but a lot of us are now realizing what we should have realized many, many years ago. Now, a lot of us have interacted with ADR, and the reason why I do not really have a presentation, this thing is only for one purpose, and I'll show you why. The reason why I do not have a formal presentation is because I need to summarize this and to talk about a number of things which will paint a better picture to you regarding what alternative justice is. And so I avoided having a detailed presentation. And the more critical reason why I wouldn't do that is because I know a little bit about alternative justice, and I actually work with the knowledge. I leave the papers at home, but I work with the knowledge, and therefore you can ask me any question on alternative justice. Trust me, I will attempt an answer. The only problem is you may not know too much about the inner workings of AJS, and you may not know when I lie to you. I always tell the story of Professor Gishaga when I was in first year. He told us that when he was a teacher, he used to tell his students, I have taught you 100%. He was an engineering teacher. I have taught you 100%. 50% of what I have taught is the truth. The other 50% I have lied. Now, your work as a student is to go to the library and determine which 50% of the things I have said was true and which 50% was a lie. But I can assure you, the exam will test 100% truth. Get that? So, sometime in the year 2010, we promulgated our constitution. But do you remember when we promulgated our constitution? Yes. Wacha nisiulize wakili. Afande, when did we promulgate our constitution?
10th August 2010.
10th August 2010. Every answer is an answer as far as I'm concerned. 10th August 2020, my brother.
2010.
2010. 10th August 2010, my brother. When did we promulgate our constitution? I can't remember. Every answer works for me. I will not ask my brother, Steve B. He used to be with us in Mutomo before he was. You look like you know, but I will ask you so that we can cut to the chase. Which date? I'm not sure. That is an answer. And I'm sure you know, Commissioner. When did we promulgate our constitution? You know the year 2010. The answer is I do not know the date. You know, when you look at me with a smiling face, I'll ask you a question. When did we promulgate?
But you said you're not asking advocates that question, so I'm one of them.
Oh, you are one of them. That's an answer too. Jesus. Did we pray as we started? Yes. Yes, we prayed. Who knows? Okay, let me ask you, but who has Googled? Now you have Googled, you need to know. Okay.
I remember 27.
Yeah?
I remember 27.
27 of?
August.
Yes. It was 27th of August 2010. Do you know it is, in a manner of speaking, some small shame if you can remember that Christmas comes every 25th of December, but you can't remember when we promulgated our constitution. It's so please let us not repeat the transgression. It is not acceptable. And so a lot of things were done in that constitution, but I'll tell you just a few of the things that are relevant to why we are here today. Sub-Article 3 of Article 1. Now, that is how you quote the law. People that you begin with do we have our card here? No, I didn't see you. Because I trained them in Naivasha on last day. These are some of the things that I taught them. You begin with a sub-article, conversationally. Sub-Article 3 of Article 1 talks about the sovereignty in this country. And you now know, and I will not ask you a lot of questions, because when you talk to people who are all suited, you know, and they have ties and they look executive, you must avoid asking them a lot of questions. Because there's a reputational risk. A reputational risk. Like if I just asked you which is the first book of the Bible, and you are unable to answer, you know there's a reputational risk. That's why I will not desist from asking those questions. So Article 1 is about sovereignty. And sovereignty lies with the people of Kenya, you know that? And Article 1 says that that sovereignty is then delegated to certain agencies of government. Part of our sovereignty has been delegated to the executive. You know, and the executive happens in two ways in Kenya. One, national government, then the county government. The powers they exercise are actually powers delegated by the Kenyans. They can actually be taken back. And they should be exercised, of course, in accordance to the dictates of the Constitution. Number two, we have delegated our power to legislative authorities. And legislative authorities are, in Kenya happen in two ways. Number one, Parliament. And Parliament is made up of the National Assembly and the Senate. And then, at the devolved level, we have the county assemblies who are supposed to be checking to see to it that your money is not eaten badly. And then, more importantly, under Article 1, the judicial authority. Our sovereignty is delegated to the judiciary and independent tribunals. And then that notion is then replicated under Article 159 of the Constitution. We delegate our power to the courts in Kenya and independent tribunals. And Kenyans then told the courts that in exercising that delegated responsibility, the courts are to ensure that alternative modes of dispute resolution are promoted. And the alternative modes of dispute resolution include 1, mediation, 2,
Alternative dispute resolution.
ADR, alternative dispute resolution, 3,
Arbitration.
arbitration, 4, negotiations, 5, conciliation, 6, traditional dispute resolution mechanisms. There are as many as they come, and that's why the Constitution uses the phrase includes. And so sometime in the year 2016, the then Chief Justice, Will Mutunga, appointed a task force to deal with, and that's why you can see my name appears against, a task force to deal with alternative justice. And we didn't get the name alternative justice from the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice appointed a task force to deal with, to operationalize Article 159, particularly 2C, and with respect to traditional modes of dispute resolution. And so when I was part of that task force, imagine, all the way from 2016, you can imagine the amount of knowledge I have gathered in this area, learned from the practitioners, because what we did was to go to the field, not to teach them, but to learn what they were doing. And so we developed a policy. It is called the AJS policy. And that policy summarizes what has been happening in this country with respect to alternative modes of justice, delivery of justice. So we have summarized it, what we came up with. And I'll tell you shortly what it is that we came up with. But our approach was that you need to learn from what is happening on the ground, and we also needed to unlearn a lot of the biases that we had regarding alternative justice. People have a lot of bias against alternative justice. And a lot of us who went to formal education, whether you went to schools that act as polling stations or schools that hold presidential elections, you are socialized in a particular manner. And a lot of times, they sought to draw you away. They sought to draw you away from what was familiar to you. And that is why we believe that some of the foods that our people eat are not as good as a loaf of bread in the morning, or some eggs. Well, my father told me that when he was growing up, there was nothing like tea. Now you can imagine when he grew up in the late 30s, he's an old man. I took tea with him today. He tells me a lot of stories. But he said there was no tea. There was no sugar as we know it. There was no bread as we know it today. And there weren't a lot of things. And so most of our education system then sought to draw us away. And after some time, they started succeeding even in doing away with mother tongue in primary schools. most of you here, apart from the ones who are born after, those of us who are born in the 60s and early 70s, it is, went through. So the system of education started socializing you to believe that what was African was essentially good. And we passed, we got a constitution, and then we had the Judicature Act that delineated sources of law. If you want to use law in this country, they say, first of all, it is the constitution. Then we have written law and statutes of general application, and principles of the common law as imported from the United Kingdom. Yeah, and the common law of England is actually their customary law. And then we say, we shall then use customary law only under limited circumstances. Very limited circumstances. One, when it is not repugnant to justice and morality. Two, if it is not contrary to written, law or the constitution, and a lot of other things. And so the application of customary law was then limited to a great extent. And that is where we started. And surprisingly, when we promulgated our constitution, we then repeated the same mistake. Our constitution still contains the repugnancy clause. But customary law, if it is repugnant to justice and morality, it still contains that clause. And so tamaduni zetu basi zikadhalilishwa kupitia kwa sheria iliyowekwa na mbeberu. Na mbeberu alipoondoka, tukajivuta sana kubadilisha sheria zetu ndo ziambatane na mila zetu na jinsi tunavyoelewa haki ni nini. Mnanipata? Lakini unajua sisi tutoka kule Mshomoroni, na zingine wakati roho amepanda huenda tukaongea Kiswahili na tutazoeana hivyo kwa sababu ni lugha ya taifa. Hebu nikueleze tulipo andika katiba mpya, tukasema sasa we have to look at traditional modes of dispute resolution. By traditional, and this is very important, by traditional, we do not mean essentially African tradition or customary law. Now, this is critical. By traditional, we mean what we are accustomed to and what is familiar in our circumstances. You can talk about traditional approaches to negotiations. You know that. You can talk about a traditional approach does not mean that it is based on custom. It means that you are acquainted with it since the days of your forefathers. I mean, you've been socialized to identify, to associate, and to understand it. That's what traditional means, as used under the Constitution. A lot of people believe that traditional means that it's purely customary law. It's not purely customary law. It's our traditional understanding of what justice is. And before, kabla mbeberu wafike, we used to dispense justice. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
And that justice has dispensed before our colonial masters arrived was actually justice that the consumers and actors identified with and appreciated. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just a while ago, we used to have what we called African courts. You know that? You know that? We used to have African courts. And African courts were courts that were not manned by trained professionals in law. We also just a while ago used to have magistrates who are called lay magistrates. Did anybody here find lay magistrates? Yeah. I mean, just very recently, we used to have, you had to say district magistrates, and then you write Prof, to differentiate them from the lay magistrates, the people who could actually send you to jail, and they never went to a law class. And so from the African court, then we came to, lay magistrates dispensing justice, and a lot of them were everywhere. And therefore that taught us then that dispensation of justice is not a preserve of those who have gone to law school. Are we together? Yes. And I'm saying this in a very summarized form. Dispensation of justice is not just for those who have gone to law school. And in our Constitution, Article 48, we gave ourselves a fundamental right called the right of the state has a right to ensure that every Kenyan has access to justice. I mean, we could as well have said that every Kenyan is entitled to access the courts. But the duty on the state, and by the state, we mean every agency that exercises whatever form of power or authority, the state has a duty to ensure that every Kenyan can access justice. Now, this is the point. Justice is not justice because it has been handed down by the court. Justice is justice if the justice seeker and the consumer feels that he or she has appeared before a forum that has addressed the grievances he or she had. One of the most outstanding doctrines governing the dispensation of justice is that there shall be no wrong without a remedy. Tuko pamoja? And where you find that there is a wrong and there is no remedy, then you know that the justice system that governs the people involved is actually deficient. Tuko pamoja? And we were structured in such a way traditionally, since the days of John the Baptist and perhaps earlier. It was structured in such a way that there was a solution for every justice grievance. There was a solution for every justice grievance. And our formal system of justice, the courts, then attempts to ensure that justice can be rendered in every situation. But then you discover that that justice system has limitations. The justice system, as justice as delivered by the courts, has certain limitations. One is costs. Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Cost. Now, the advocates and neighbors can talk. Time. The adversarial nature, the intense engagement and aggression that leaves both parties panting for clean air at the end of the duel. You know that? You know what we used to call duels during our time in medieval England? Once you disagree with somebody, you had to resolve it the old way. And the old way is going somewhere without wearing boxing gloves. Bare knuckled engagement. And by the time you are done, you then would respect each other for eternity. We used to say that for you to be very good friends, you must have resolved that critical question. Who is better at? And then you can respect each other. And life continues normally. Please don't look at me as though you don't know that this is what you used to do. And so those days when you would take your machete and engage to resolve, when there was no law, and people found their way to systems that were more acceptable. You remember in Lecture Mad is The Concubine. By the way, how many people have read The Concubine? The story of Iluoma, that beautiful woman that every man wanted. But if you marry her or you engage with her, you would die. Called a daughter of the sea. So married to Emenike, and so you know how Emenike, died after fighting with Madume. Slashed each other with machetes. Those notions of justice that were a bit, they may have looked relevant those days. But then, you find that the notions of justice developed as the community advances, and most of them were then dropped. You remember in Things Fall Apart, when one clan killed a young man and then the other clan went and captured a young man called Ikemefuna. And Ikemefuna was then handed over to Okongo to stay with. And they developed a bond of friendship like a father and son. And love developed. And one day, the elders of the clan community say, now you have to go and sacrifice Ikemefuna. And you know the story. So that was justice to them. But notions of justice have then developed, over the years. And then our constitution recognizes that there are forms of justice that have been in existence, but then puts in place parameters to ensure that both justice systems are recognized, given credence, but they are also delineated and delimited in such a way that they don't cross the line. Hallelujah? Yeah? That they don't cross the line. So we went out looking, and we found that there are people who favored resolving their disputes by going to elders. They would go to the elders. And the elders would sit under a tree and resolve, the dispute. Others would go to the headman. Others would go to, their father or their mother. There are a lot of disputes that are resolved by your father. And if your father is not there, your uncle. If you fight with your wife, by the way, do you fight with your wife or do you beat your wife? Or do you get beaten? Is it a fight? These days I'm told, if you are a man, you are in every potentiality. You could be the beater or you could be the BT. When I was in college, we used to think that men were superior in some sense because we come from a very patriarchal society. And one day when I was walking around a certain auditorium, I heard, I said, a group of men we knew by popular acclamation to be very patriarchal. And I told them, guys, there is something you need to know. Now, you may go crazy in your antics of attacking women, but there are two ladies you need to know are ready for you. And so, they say where I was born and brought up, it's better for you to be safe than sorry. So, if you fight with your husband, President William Ruto, before he became the president, advised one of our members of parliament, who is now a very senior ranking member of the community, I will not mention him, that as a man, when you are beaten by your wife, you do not go to, you don't go to report to the police. You keep quiet. But then, that underscores a problem that makes AJS very necessary, because studies that have been done have then demonstrated that a large percentage of Kenyans do nothing when they have a grievance. They don't know. I mean, you're a man, you've been beaten up by your wife. You are told you cannot cry. Crying has got its own benefits. Because if you cry or wail out loudly, there is the likelihood that people could come. And they could rescue you. And being rescued by neighbors. When I mean, in a physical combat and engagement, when, you know, the fight sometimes gets so intense that you wish a passerby could come. Because you really are wondering how this will end. Because you are receiving so much, you can't run away because it has a reputational component to it. Running away, you know. So when somebody is passing by and comes and finds you fighting, says, hey, wacheni kupigana. Saa hiyo, you now come to life. You're almost running away. You say, huyu jamaa inamaliza huyu. Because now you know there is another justice. I mean, you know, it saves your face and you know, you walk up kwenye bwana, pigana kule wakapigana, akapigwa, akarudi akapigwa, akaenda akarukia fence. So when we separated them, tukisema amepigwa, akasema nilikuwa nachukua step. You know, you cannot take a step in a combat for 50 meters. Mpaka wewe uangukie fence. So there are people then who have nowhere to go. Because maybe social dynamics. You know, a wife is beaten. A lot of wives who are beaten, but they will not come to court. Fact, because they will not want the husband to be jailed. You know that? They will not come to court. And a lot of them are suffering at home. But the community has systems of ensuring that, you know, as a man, if you beat up your wife, ama unaanza kumfukuza, you act like a man when she is still in your house and you threaten. But when she begins to pack up and leave, you now remember that she will go to her parents, and to get her from her parents, you will be required by the elders to come with your own elders to supply food, a minimum of 3 goats. And even if she had wronged you, the elders do not sit down to no avail. So now you begin to look at it, the consequences. And before she reaches the bell, you tell her, where so because there were systems of deterrence. So these days you find that there are people who suffer through, and they don't, this is a study that has been done, they don't come to court. And the few who come to court, in fact, studies show that out of the many people, 64% of people who have had a grievance in the recent past will go to AJS. They will not come to court. Disputes are resolved out there. About 17% are the ones who come to court. And that 17% has kept all of us engaged. You know, this afternoon, the meeting was about how we can better serve the consumers of justice. We are talking about 17% of people who have had a grievance. And if there's 17%, it means that 83% are out there. And so, if everybody decided to resolve their dispute by coming to court, Senator, the courts will not manage. Because we have a problem handling the 17% who have decided to come to court and to come to us. As lawyers, our diaries are full. And it is not every, my colleagues, it is not every person with a dispute in court who comes to us. In fact, you see through a course list, and almost 3/4 of the course list, people are underrepresented. So, the lawyers in Kenya, the 20,000 of us, only a handful of us pay to practice law. The others feel that it's unbiblical to call somebody my lord. Or my lady. I'm not saying that that is the reason, but a lot of us do not practice law. So when you look at even the legal services available, if everybody desired to be represented by a lawyer, if everybody who had a dispute desired to be represented by a lawyer, in Kenya, we do not have enough lawyers to gratify this task. In Kenya, we do not have enough courts to gratify this task. The courts are breaking their backs because of the small number of cases that have gone to court. And so, the Constitution then said that we will now formalize other forms of dispute resolution and it is a command, the court is then supposed to promote those other forms of dispute resolution. And everybody is bound by the Constitution. And so where the Constitution says you should promote, you have no choice. So if parties want to resolve their dispute away from the court, whether it's a civil matter or a criminal matter, the Constitution says we are to promote their choice. And the choice that Kenyans exercise in determining the mode of dispute resolution is an expression of their sovereignty. If I want to resolve my dispute by going to my pastor, and I agree with the person I'm fighting or with, Kimuli has no business saying, I must hang on to this matter because once I saw this case, I determined this is where fees for my children will come from. Na wakili aliniambia when I started practicing, kaniambia, don't finish cases. He's still in practice. He said, don't finish cases. Ati unataka kukula mpaka mfupa. Ati usimalize nini? Usimalize kesi. So, when you have that mentality, somebody will come to you and tell you that I want to resolve this matter. The clan has called us to resolve the matter, and you will say no. Or you make it difficult for them to achieve that. If you are a police officer, police officers have a lot of power. When you discover there is an offense, and people come to you and tell you, this is a matter that we want to resolve, we want to go and talk. I've seen some police officers who say, hii lazima nifungue nini? Na kwanza wakiongea unashika huyu unasema wewe ingia pale ndani. Hata complainer tunamwambia ingia hapa ama look, they are not here, they didn't come today. The ones who do that did not come today, they are not here. And there are very many reasons why these things happen. There are some, a while ago, courts, some courts viewed alternative justice as inferior justice. And so, I have heard in my practice in life, words like this is a kangaroo. Those are kangaroo courts. Now, the Constitution does not call them kangaroo courts. The Constitution says it is justice, as long as it looks like justice. So justice outside the court is not justice that is diluted. And this is what we have taught actors in AJS. That do not dilute it. Kuna kwetu mshomoroni, Waswahili husema mgema akisifiwa tembo kesho yake halitanyweka kwa sababu itatoa nini? And so what we have told actors in AJS is when you are given the honor of sitting at the table. Today I sat next to Jad here at the table. I noticed, kwa sababu macho hayana pazia, that we were the only ones who had access to water. I think the rest of you have had to dig into your pockets to buy water. Once in a while, you get to experience some honor. Kidogo kidogo tu. Because hata sisi ni watu, unajua. So, we tell them, once you are given that recognition, that you can sit at the high table and dispense justice, and the justice you dispense is then accepted by the Constitution. And our judges here look at what you have done and say, there's nothing for me to do. And courts are not doing that, believe it or not. You come with a determination, you say, we resolve this matter before our pastor. The judge looks at it, says, so why are you here? One person says, hiyo kitu mimi si kutosheka. What we are telling actors in AJS is, if a dispute is resolved outside court, and it can be resolved in a number of ways, when we looked, tulipoangalia na kutathmini, tukasema ya kwamba, this is the way alternative justice manifested. Number one, we had what we call autonomous justice system. Autonomous happens in the sense that it happens without, on its own. It is organic. There is no one to prompt it. It is happening now. As we sit here, there are people seated under a tree resolving a dispute. You know that? You know that? There are people seated before the chief. Chief of what? This is chief magistrate. Chief, kuna chief hapa. Unajua, chief magistrates are actually called chiefs. Our language, those of us who practice law, we actually call them chief, in short. So, there's a chief seated somewhere, resolving a dispute. Na baada ya resolve dispute, mkisha salimiana, mnaambiwa sasa kuna kitu kwa Wakamba inaitangwa uji. Kwa sababu wazee wakai chini, and we all understand that unakuja umebeba nini? So it's organic in the sense that it's happening without our involvement. We call that autonomous, AJS. You can't control it, you can't limit it. People will go to their clans, people will go to their father, they will go to their mother, they will go to their big brother, they will go to their... It is autonomous. And the majority of us lie there. Hata wewe, uko na degree yako, ama umesoma sheria, ukipatikana na shida, your first instinct, if you are brought up well, is to call the elders. Unajua? Unaenda kwa ango yako unamwambia, huyu jamaa ameni. Kwetu tunasemanga nitatuma mtumia kwako. Anaenda anakuambia unajua huyu jamaa amesema umemkosea. Kwa hivyo mnakuja mnafanya nini? Mnakaa chini. Na you are told to come with your elders. Unaitangwa witnesses kwa agreements zile tunaandika. Those witnesses ndio umewaita, but when they come there they are not coming to defend you. In fact, if you are found guilty, they will be the first ones to condemn you. And you are the one who did what? You are the one who brought them. You know that is what happened. Oh, umepigana na mwanako na umeita wazee. Wale wazee uliita. Wakikalia pale, wanasikiliza, unasikia amekwambia, ni wewe uko na? So those systems, and then others will go to the chief, others will go to, the police, others will go to the probation officer to resolve their matters, others will go to the children's department, if it is a matter that touches on a child, and these disputes are then resolved. And then what we say in our policy is that as part of the court's duty to promote AJS, once you come with, you either tell the court we want to go out there and resolve our matter, or you come with a resolution. There are a number of things the courts are supposed to look at to determine whether they will then enforce the finding. And the court will not review that finding, but the court will ask whether the process complied with the dictates of justice. You know, if you are resolving a matter outside the court, you know you have to hear both parties. You know that?
Yes.
You know you cannot receive money to corrupt your way into the decision. You know that? Yes. You know you cannot sit where the decision involves you as a person. You can't be the judge. You know that? Those principles of justice are the same ones that affect our ordinary courts. And so we tell people, even where you fail, but there are a lot of bad things happening out there. Those bad things are also happening. You know that? That's why you have Honorable Ngi here who will make a decision. And actually, you know, you have the right to disagree. And when you disagree, you will come to judge. And judge may agree with the lower court or may disagree. And you can disagree with judge and go to, you know. And there are many times that the courts will say that your rights were breached. Not elsewhere, but actually during the trial. So there are shortcomings in systems of justice outside court, but there are also shortcomings with the justice as delivered by the court. And therefore, our duty is not only to promote, but to also protect alternative justice. To protect the choices that people exercise to go for justice out there, but to transform. There's also the duty to transform. Kwa sababu, and now this is where I'll finish. The duty to transform means that umeangalia na ukaona kama kuna kasoro. Na ukikuta kama kuna kasoro, you do not throw the baby with the, you don't throw the baby with the bathwater. Unaona? Kama maziano kisiango mwana watu. If there is a gully outside your house, a deep gully, you will either work on it. Lakini ukisema hii mtaro potelea mbali. Nani anavunjika mguu? Unajua? So tunasemanga don't give up on a gully that could one day break your hand. So when you find shortcomings, the duty to transform means that you don't throw it away. In my community, wanafungia watu kwa gunia. Ukikosa. These things are happening. Wanaweka ndani ya gunia ile kuna mashimo shimo. Believe it or not, those old men understand science that if you are deprived of oxygen you could die. So unaweka kwa gunia ile kuna mashimo shimo so that you can breathe normally. Because breathing is important. Alafu hiyo gunia inafungwa hapa juu so that you cannot, there is ingress. Ingress is enforced. It is enforced ingress. Kwa sababu umeshikwa na wazee kadhaa, the ingress into the gunia is enforced. And then they have to prevent you ingress, exit. So wanafunga hapa juu. Na so umejikunja kidogo. And then wanachukua the size of fibers zile zimetolewa juice mzuri. Alafu wanakupaka kila mahali. Wanapaka kila mahali. Alafu wanakubeba vizuri wanakupeleka kwa jua. Sasa hiyo umekosa. Wakikuweka kwa jua, what the sun does, the sun is very powerful by the way. It works with very extraordinary tools. Just like sisal, ukiweka kwa jua, ikikupiga tu hivi, the juice begins to seep into your skin. Believe it or not, the skin has pores and it is open. Ile kuwashwa utawashwa, isi vile mko hawezi ukajikuna. Lakini unafanya nini? Unawashwa. Umelia and then wazee wanaanza kukunywa chai. Na unasikia wakiongelelea mvua, wakiongelelea visit they are going to go to. And you are saying the constitution says that justice shall not be delayed. Hii inakosa iishe haraka. But they are talking about things. Alafu for some time they now begin asking you targeted questions. What is your name? You give your 3 names, including the name of your father. You know you had fought with your father. Wanakuuliza, what is the name of your clan? You answer in a loud voice. I am from the Akitondo clan. And the chairman is around. Unauliza, who is your father? Unasema, my father is called Kimuli Mangeta Msania wa Kiaka. Kiaka wa Msania. Ndio wa mama wa mtoto wa Kitukwe. You know you had fought with your father. Then another elder asks again, who is your father? Now, if you do what you have done, they ask for more soup. So you have to repeat again. Now, by the time they let you go, utaulizwa swali moja tu, unapaswa kupika baba yako. Sufficient deterrence. You will never touch your father again. In fact, kama ulikuwa umeshika kitu hivi na unaona baba yako karibu, unakunjua mkono apite before you go. Now, that system works. You know that? Yes. The system that was designated by Moses, an eye for an eye, worked. You know that? It actually worked. But it is not everything that works that should be promoted. So there are some modes of dispute resolution that involve practices that are unacceptable. And the Constitution says those ones are to be done away with and the people are to transform their ways. And it is your duty not to tell them that wakati wa clan umepitwa. Clan imepitwa na nini? Na wakati. Siwaambie mambo ya wazee imepitwa na nini? Is to tell them some of the things you are doing are actually not acceptable because they may work. Because torture used to work. You know that? The Nyayo house chambers. No, they used to work. Huh? Unawekewa sindano kwa hapa kwa kucha. Inapigwa kidogo. Inaingia kidogo. Unaulizwa swali ya kwanza. Unatapatapa. Inapigwa mara ya pili. Unaulizwa swali ya tatu. Ukianza kusema but inapigwa nini? Unaeleza even the question that you've not been asked. It used to work. But if you extract a confession, officer, from a person using force, duress, or such threats, judge and the magistrates here will knock it down. We all know that. Torture is not acceptable. It will not be accepted just because it is clothed in formality in a police station or in a court station. It is not accepted anywhere, whether it is in court or it is out there. So there are those procedures, there are those things that people do that are unacceptable. Those ones will not be the justification for you to say disputes will not be resolved out of court. They are a reason for you to engage with the actors and to transform and to make them align better with our justice system. Tumepatana? And so the part in short is this. The word alternative is used in the Constitution. Now this is critical. And you need to remember this. Why does the Constitution use the word alternative? And this is the reason I will not ask questions now. It is where we started. Kenyans delegated their sovereignty to the judiciary and to the independent courts and independent tribunals. And therefore, the court system is the default dispute resolution mechanism. Default, I mean this, that when it comes to the court, you and I have no choice. Tumepatana? But for all the other modes of dispute resolution, you engage your wish, your choice. You can say yes or you can say no. You know that? For every other mode of dispute resolution. If somebody tells you mwende kwa clan, ama kwa jury njeke, mka resolve matters, your personal sovereignty gives you the power to say no. You know that? I don't believe in that. If somebody tells you, wewe ni Mkamba, tutaenda kwa Kivitu, you have a right to say, article, I no longer believe in Kivitu. Mimi nimeokoka. Unajua kuna watu wanaokokanga wakati mambo yako mbaya. Unasema mimi nimeokoka, siendi wapi? Kivitu nataka kwenda kotini. Ukikuja kotini, court haichukui evidence ya Kivitu, and there are some things where there is no evidence, by the way. So under Article 44 says you cannot force somebody to accept your culture. Naelewa? So you can actually say no. You can say no. Even going to the Catholics, the Constitution says that you only submit to the Catholic, and of course Islam is not a culture. You have to submit. If you don't submit, that person can come to judge. And when it comes to judge, the court will issue summons for you to appear. Now, what happens if you don't appear in answer to summons? No, this is a civil matter. If you don't appear, what happens? It will be heard. Judge will not wait for you. She only has a duty to confirm that you are aware and you've been notified. And you've been notified that you don't appear. In fact, the notice says if you do not appear, such proceedings may be taken, and such orders issued, your absence notwithstanding. In criminal matters, if somebody does not show up, what happens? Warrants. And they will be extended until you are arrested. And if you are not arrested, conveniently the matter may be withdrawn under Section 87A until you are seen taking Moratina in the neighborhood. And the case comes back to life. You know that? So you do not have a choice when it comes to the ordinary courts. You have to, you cannot say, I will not submit. If you have not submitted to the court system, you are deemed to have waived your entitlement to be heard. You know that? Because the courts are the default. If everything else fails, and justice must be dispensed, and disputes must be resolved, the person to do that is judge. And we have no choice. That is the only reason why the others are called alternatives. Because there is one that is a fulcrum, and that is the court. The one you can't run away from, even if you wanted. But if both of you agree to move away from Honorable Guy and to go and resolve your matter, Honorable Guy is under a duty to then allow you to go and. But if one of you says, no, I will not, the matter remains where? So the word alternative does not mean inferior justice. It is justice in accordance with the law. But you have the choice. Tuko pamoja? Iko mtu na swali? Minutes are over.
Is there a conversation?
Kwa pesa na anaenda kula uroda. Anaenda kuponda raha. Nilipoingia kule Tanga, nilikuta kibao kinasema Tanga waja leo kuondoka majaliwa. Watu wanasema Mombasa, ukienda Mombasa kuingia ni
Rais.
kutoka ni
Matata.
sasa anaingia Mombasa, amelipwa pesa kwa sababu mtoto alibakwa. Unaelewa? So because of the possibility of abuse, we recommend for matters that involve children in whatever, the ODPP has a process of diversion. But this will be a considered step for Romeo and Juliet relationships. Munaelewa?
Yes.
It will be considered in the presence of all parties, taking into account the best interests of the child, and then the court will make an appropriate order, and ODPP will take charge. To always be willing to try the limits of the law. First of all, this question of Romeo and Juliet relationships, the emerging jurisprudence now is that we are not sending them to jail. But a while ago, the boy used to be sent to jail. So now, because of what the courts have now been saying, and the reality, and looking at the circumstances, and that all children are equal. I have one son and two daughters. The daughters are the noisiest in my house. But thinking as a parent, your son and your daughter are. So if they do crazy things, when my son turned 17, we recommended that we are going for family dinner, as we normally do. You know, when you are a parent, you believe that you are still in charge, all through, until reality. So when I say we are going to Fogo Bausho in Westlands, and we're in between, we have to drive all the way so that we can do dinner, in honor of my son, he said, "Me niko na plan." Not me and the mother said, "Hey, what kind of a plan? You want to ask like a Nigerian, what kind of a plan? What kind of a plan?" So he says, I have a date with my birthday twin. Now, for those of us who are born those days, you don't even understand who a birthday twin is. And I'm grumbling with the experience I have in law. Then I said, what's a birthday twin? The mother said, somebody who was born the same day with you. I almost said, you know, the question is not directed at you. It turns out that there is a girl who was born on the same date, and they have agreed to go for coffee in the afternoon. When he mentioned the name, you know, And there are those names that are not in the borderline. Unajua kuna majina yanaweza sema uulize ni msichana ama ni msichana ama ni unajua huyu ni msichana. I'm saying, what do you mean? Where are you going? Who are the parents? When did you know this one? You know how? You know where are you going? He says we are going to Buruburu. So me, I'm now thinking of Romeo and Juliet relationships. I'm saying, what if something goes wrong? My son is going to Form 4 in Mangu. I have worked all my life. I mean, how is this going to work? And I want to say no, but I don't know how to say it. So I asked him, so how much do you need? Because the guy has set up a date, but he has no finances. He says, how much do you need? He says, I think 3,000 will be enough. 3,000, that means it's an extended, engagement. I say 1,500 will be enough. Your mom will, you don't want to say you will be taken. You say, your mom will get a cab for you to take you. That's how a cab works. Uber takes you to a specific place. So that in case anything happens, you know the last scene. And so, I'm away, and I keep texting the mother, is Raymond back? Can you ask? I don't want to ask, can you ask where he is? Luckily, they go out for the date, and it begins to rain. And so what they do is they go to the girl's parents' place. So that is where they are now given tea. So the mother tells me, hata walienda huko kwa msichana. So my heart was pacified. If you find a situation where a young man was jailed because he had an engagement in a situation that would qualify for review by the judge, it is your duty to find your way, at least for judge to say whether in view of emerging jurisprudence, it is okay for the young man to be out of school, to continue serving a sentence while he engaged in sexual intercourse with a classmate that was consensual. And the courts will normally consider the circumstances, because it may not be appropriate to have one person out of school. You know that? Mm-hmm. And after 15 years, you can't recover your life. And this was something that happened because you were foolish. A lot of the people here, no, they did not come today. A lot of the people who would not be engineers, would not be judges, would not be lawyers, would not be accountants, if you had been caught. I once addressed the prison in Kimuli, everybody in the prison. And all of us came well suited and talking through the nose. And when it was my turn to speak, I reminded them that most of us on this side are only here because we have not been caught. But if we had been caught, we would be wearing the striped. And that's a reality. A lot of us have not been caught. Clement Logans, he's called Mark Twain, said, I once wrote a telegram to all my friends in town, saying, no telegrams. We used to be told they counted the words, so they have to be very short. So he said, free! All has been discovered. He didn't elaborate. He says, they all left town at once. Because most of us have something we do not want to be known. There is something we've done which we want to hide. And that is why the Constitution grants you the right to privacy. A lot of us here know that if you had been caught, you will not be here today.
It's actually more religious and probably more healing than that of ritual purity.
Yes, I'll answer that in my final 2 minutes. And then I'll not take any more questions because tea is getting cold. Now, this is it. The Lord should help me to tell a story as I answer this question, because I only have 2 minutes to do so. You are right. AJS is about reconciliation, restoration. Yes. And most of the times, AJS leaves the two of you, as friends. When the chief makes a decision, one party will not be happy. Courts make decisions. They rarely resolve disputes. Sometimes a court will resolve dispute, but for a dispute to be resolved, the court must find a way of engaging the parties so that the outcome is acceptable by all the parties. So one of the premiums of AJS is that it actually leads to societal cohesion and peace, and everybody leaves a seat of justice feeling that justice has been done. And there are some things that the normal courts cannot even cannot address. I was in the soul one day. I was called from Nairobi, told their clients in the office, and they want to see you. I said, what is this? They can be addressed by other lawyers. He said, no, they have said they must see you. When a client says they must see you, there is a problem. Kwa sababu kule kwetu wanasema bila mgambo ikilia. I said, what is it? They said, no, they have to see you. Now, I have seen in the news that there was some talk of two people who had gone for illicit romance in a particular guest house. And they couldn't start together. My father told me it's a science that is known in Ukambani. That you can actually treat your protecting your territory by going to an artisan who ensures that if a man touches your wife, they get. So I asked, how is it done? He said the woman has to do it herself. He said you come and take your sword out of the scabbard, and then you finish with it, you wash it, and you tell your wife, nirudishie hii. So akisharudisha hivi, amen. I would have known that. Ama unakunywa maji ya kibuyu na unamwambia nifunikie. So I'm saying this because my father told me it happens. Now I didn't know it happens until I saw it that time. When I was there, I drove to Kitui. And then they told me, we are here. This man, mtu wake ameenda, amefanya kosa. Amechukua bibi ya mwingine na wamekwama pale. Na huyu ni bwana ya mama. Na wamekubaliana kwamba tutaandika agreement, watalipa. Ndio wafanye abrakadabra. Now I said, like Thomas of the Bible, I will believe when and so we proceeded. We proceeded. And an armed escort. That time, bribery does not get there because you have to talk to the OCS. Now, mwambie, najua this is outside your line. But you need to do something to clear those crowds. So that you go with police officers who will be sniffing like dogs and they will return and tell everybody there is nothing. Get out of here. The firepower is very important. So we go. And then because for you to do an agreement, you have to know how to style the agreement, So you then of course do not say that people are stuck and so on and so forth. You find a language. But the man paid 900,000. The one who was with somebody's wife paid 900,000. And then 100,000 came to me. So that's $1 million. 100,000 came to me. Yamacho. And so we did the agreement. We don't say he has slept with somebody's wife and gotten stuck, but he's compensating him for something. But the money is given in cash, not even a check. And it was raised by friends. There is collegiality even in sin. There is collegiality in sin. Very quickly, within 30 minutes. Within 30 minutes. While their friend was stuck, yelling and groaning, friends raised $1 million. I did the agreement myself. And then they got released. And of course, because the media was announcing, this has happened, the lady then instructed me to, and she was very clever, because she called a friend in Mombasa, and a report was recorded in a police station in Mombasa. Before me now, is so and so, who reports that there are news doing rounds in Kitui, that she is stuck somewhere, was not even there. And of course, we threatened here and there, and the story died. The courts cannot enforce such an agreement because it is, but AJS. And listen to this, because I'm finishing. AJS will resolve that matter. And as I said, you will share a God with your. Na mnakaa pamoja na mnasalimiana. Wale wengine wanasema wewe ni mjinga. Lakini AJS has done it. A few years down the line, the lady did not even know that I am not a very courageous guy. Such a person then greets you. You know the messages that come to your phone. Hi. First one is hi. Hello. How are you? It's been long. You know, when you have some background information that this person has been stuck. And they're saying, hi. Hello. How are you? It's been long. That is the time you proclaim your Christian, your affiliation to the Lamb of God. Hey, you answer. You know the Bible says, talk to each other with hymns and
Praises.
you know. So you answer with a psalm. You know, may the Lord bless you. Because you're trying to. And if you meet her in the open like this, and she comes like she wants to hug you, that is the time you remember that you have a gift in tongues, in speaking in tongues. Because when you remember the 900,000 that was paid, and the circumstances that were not very friendly, and somebody is telling you a message that says, hi darling, you know what darling? You are in every potentiality if you begin having. So AJS resolves some of the things that ordinary courts may say are immoral, out of jurisdiction, and